Aquarius 28, a tree felled and sawed. To bring the mind into reality requires us to focus on here and now. Here and now is the location of reality. It doesn't exist elsewhere. What we think of as the past and the future is just what we're thinking of. It's a mental construct. So to bring us into the here and now requires a certain way of being with the mind. And it can be achieved in spiritual practices, meditation and so on, where we're focusing on the breath and what is immediate. That's an exercise in delivering the mind to that state of the only reality. And yet, by no means is meditation the only or even the best method to do this. Chopping a tree down is another method, for example. Carrying water, cooking supper for your family, doing the washing up, getting dressed, anything really where you have to focus on getting it right or it's wrong. And if you do any of those things wrongly, you'll get feedback, which you don't want, feedback that you weren't present-centered when you were doing that thing. So what we're using here is the image of a tree being sawed and felled. And it requires us not only to have concentration, but also passion. You cannot half-heartedly bring a tree down. It won't work. It will be ineffectual. Your energies will just be dissipated and wasted. You have to be passionate. It takes all of your effort to do that. And you can't do it without concentration. You can't just swing the axe or use the chainsaw willy-nilly if you still want the same number of fingers at the end of the exercise that you started with. You have to concentrate. So doing a simple task, such as doing the washing up without leaving some plates dirty or breaking a few cups, getting dressed and remembering that all the bits of you that need to look just so are attended to. Everything in life, making every decision count, every single detailed decision count. And if we think of artworks as well, we notice that the difference between an okay piece of art and a wonderfully beautiful piece very often lies in the detail. The specific colours chosen, the omissions or inclusions of a particular detail. These details, they make the difference. And we have to learn then how to align our passion and our concentration. This is not something that children find easy. They're very passionate, aren't they? They're playing wildly and so on, but they don't concentrate very well at all. We need to teach children to concentrate and to channel their passions if they're to actually be effectual in the world. And yet, as we get older, we tend to lose passion and concentrate on what we're doing rather more in a robotic way, an automated kind of approach. We're focusing on what we're actually used to focus on, and there's no life in it. There's no passion. We get it right, but we've got it right 1,000 times before. It doesn't change our state of being. So that blend of concentration and passion is quite unusual and very special. This is the blend that we need if we're to become able to master our topic. Whatever the topic is, it requires the blend of these two things. Now, another feature that we're discussing here is not only how to unite passion with concentration, but also how to render spiritual and sacred the simple duties in life. And if you actually work in a forest which I did for some time. I loved that part of my life thoroughly. I was working in the forest every day and just cleaning it, just taking up the fallen branches, burning off the dead twigs and leaves, storing the logs, taking down some of the excess growth of trees and so on with a chainsaw, and being with that whole process thoroughly, working alone, or if I was working occasionally with other people, we would be working our own way in silence. It was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it was profound because it was this blend of passion and concentration. And yet it was sacred. It was being done on retreat very often. When we did Sufi retreats, we had this karma yoga thing where we would do work to keep the kanka up and running. And that was the best part of the experience. To be honest, working in the forest, even better than the spiritual practices and the dances we were doing. It's wonderful, and yet we need to learn that. It's not something that we remember from childhood, because we never did it in childhood. We only ever got the passion, not the concentration. To bring yourself to that state of feeling passionate about ordinary work, earthy work, where your hands get a bit dirty and your clothes need to be old clothes that you don't mind destroying a little bit, and you know, you're physical with it. That level of involvement in that kind of activity is a sacred act, and it awakens a degree of consciousness within us that is entirely absent for those who live all the time in cities, who see grey most of the time. There's a big difference in life if you actually think about the colours that you look at. If you're looking at grey most of your life, it's a very different life experience to what it would be if you were looking at green all your life, or if you were a fisherman looking at blue most of the time. These very simple things make a huge difference to what happens in consciousness. And the atmosphere that you're in, whether you're in this busy, loud, noisy, quite aggressive atmosphere of a city, or whether you're actually listening to birds, or the movement of the branches in the wind, it makes a very big difference to what's going on in the mind. And we cannot expect to move forward in our spiritual work unless we actually attend to the mind. And it wants some stillness, and it wants some beauty, and it wants some green. And if it doesn't have those things, then it's wanting. It wants those things. It needs those things to bring wholesome balance to the processes which it engages with. So if you actually don't relax your mind and give it some beauty and naturalness to be absorbed, then your mind is going to be off kilter. It's not going to work properly. You're going to become obsessional or anxious or driven, ambitious to the point of losing joy. What we're talking about is the difference between pleasure and joy as well. You can get pleasure in a city, but you can't really know joy. Not really, not without something natural going on, like the relationship you feel with your loved ones. That's a natural feeling. But you don't get that in offices and factories. So you have to find joy in your life, not just pleasure. Too much pleasure just destroys the possibility of joy. You don't accumulate joy by pyramiding up a load of pleasures. They're mutually exclusive things, actually. Joy is the price you pay for your pleasure. Lost joy. You have to give up joy if you want pleasure. Typically, I mean, there are exceptions. A little bit of pleasure is very nice. I'm talking about excess, where you live for pleasure and ambition and so on. So we need to make our lives simple if we want to know the depth of our spiritual nature. And that simplicity is rooted in simple tasks and in nature.